My injury was during another job I had, which was delivering beer. I had a herniated I was a registered nurse for about 20 years, and I actually injured myself at work. And it seemed like after that, I just started getting more and more chronic pain conditions. I went from being a Division I college athlete to this. And it sucks now, But
I've had nearly debilitating headaches since I was 8 because our car was hit by a 19-year-old girl who was having too much fun with a friend while driving. So I've had skin in the game. What I want to explore here are the broader implications for people like me. How do they feel about the disconnect between the public's perception of opioids and their personal positive experiences with them? Where does the medical field stand on this issue today in terms of prescribing opioids? And what are the implications for pain control's future?
my dad put me into sports at an early age. Initially, I didn't want to do that, but I ended up finding a love for basketball and then ended up getting a full ride to play in college.
This is Nicole Douglas, a 45-year-old woman who once worked in adolescent mental health in schools and hospitals, and now is on disability because of her relentless pain.
When I was 18, I left home and went straight to Alabama. Played basketball for 2 years, and then I got injured and had to stop. And that's kind of where everything started to crumble as far as my quality of life as what I knew it to be. And then years later, I got sick with the pancreatitis. In 2010, I was diagnosed with chronic pancreatitis, and then here I am today.
In the hospital for pancreatitis.
Ironically enough.
Tragically, when the country turned its much-needed, well-deserved attention to the opioid epidemic, these folks were swept under the proverbial rug of anti-opioid rhetoric. People who responsibly used their opioid prescriptions to the letter could no longer get the medications that gave them back their dignity. I totally concede that users die from overdosing on these substances. I'm not naive, but there's something that people tend to forget or ignore or refuse to consider altogether. And it seriously pisses me off. Sometimes, opioids can be beneficial. Hi, I'm Casey Shibilia, and we're going to have a little open-minded conversation about the all too commonly forgotten side of opioids, and that's the patients who legitimately need them. It's important to note at this juncture that opioid-related deaths have afflicted our country for decades, and there's no two ways about it. In 2024 alone, nearly 55,000 people died from this class of drugs. But that's not the alpha and omega of this story.
The opioid epidemics in the United States started in 2017 when it was announced officially. Obviously, by that time, we already knew that there is a significant amount of opioid-related death and problems in this country.
This is Dr. Mikhail Artemonov, a Harvard-educated pain management specialist.
In medicine, it's always double-edged sword. You can't just implement certain rules from ruling organizations such as CDC, FDA, and expect the medicine would be perfect.
In 2023, there were 37.5 opioid prescriptions per 100 people in the United States. That's a drastic difference from the 2019 figures, when we saw nearly 50 prescriptions per 100. So we're doing extremely well, all things considered.
There's been a significant problem on both sides. However, as a practicing pain physician, I see that the patient have limited access to non-opioid modalities.
This is a tiered concoction of factors that contributed to our fragile position in 2017. At the very top, you have companies like Purdue Pharma flooding the medical market with long-acting medications like OxyContin, at one point providing the country with enough oxy to steadily medicate the entire nation for something like 3 months.
Purdue Pharma and its Sackler family owners rose to fame and then to infamy as the makers of the powerful painkiller OxyContin.
This is a bit of information from Reuters.
Now, the pharmaceutical company and its founders have reached a new $7.4 billion settlement to resolve thousands of lawsuits alleging it fueled an opioid addiction crisis in the U.S.
These companies were extremely deceptive in their practices, initially telling doctors that there was no risk of addiction with their miracle medication.
Take a look at exactly how this crisis began. William Brangham has that.
It's hard to grasp the full scope and scale of the opioid crisis we are in the midst of. The numbers are staggering. Almost 500,000 Americans have died in the last 15 years from an overdose, and the majority of those involve opioids.
The problem was that Purdue Pharma and its owner, the Sackler family, got greedy. Some estimates put the family's wealth in the $200 to $500 million range before they developed their golden goose. According to the Attorney General, the Sacklers and Purdue Pharma made more than $36 billion from a pill that was smaller than a mini M&M, but it packed one hell of a punch if you broke the sacred time-release seal. We're talking about a punch that lands roughly between Ali and Tyson. You will feel it. You might die.
New information recently surfaced about the opioid epidemic.
You're listening to Nightly Business Report.
A drug enforcement database now shows 76 billion oxycodone and hydrocodone pills flooded U.S. communities between 2006 and 2012.
However, they overcorrected and went ridiculously far in the other direction. In 2016, the CDC released its quote-unquote guidelines, which were way too restrictive, leaving 51 million chronic pain patients potentially out in the proverbial rain. Most pain therapists were forced to drastically reduce opioid patients' doses extremely quickly, causing the patients a great deal of pain and discomfort, ranging from cold-like symptoms to every imaginable avenue of pain and discomfort in between. When you take prescription opioids, there is a 3 to 12% chance that you too may become addicted. So the risk is relatively low. That doesn't make it any less traumatic for the person who is addicted, but the odds are in your favor on this one.
On average, 91 Americans are still dying every single day.
Check out this info from PBS.
The rate of addiction to opioids has shot up by almost 500%.
All right, so let's go back for a minute and talk about the more recent state of things. I wholeheartedly acknowledge that the CDC found that in 2023, 217 people died every day from drugs, and that roughly 165 of those deaths were due to opioids in one form or another. But what that statistic doesn't take into account is the number of those deaths are due to the illicit opioid varieties, like the street formulas of fentanyl and OxyContin, which are chock full of dangerous impurities.
Experts say the deadliest drug in the country, which is fentanyl, is getting even more dangerous. I spoke with DEA Special Agent in Charge Jared Forjay to learn more about the fentanyl xylazine mix.
Let's listen to CBS WTKR News.
And if it couldn't get any worse, it's a flesh-rotting street drug fueling overdose deaths in Hampton Roads.
As much as I endlessly believe that opiates have a concrete place in society, they still have to be constantly monitored because, back to 2023, 8.6 million Americans from as young as the age of 12 reported having misused their opioid prescriptions. 2/3 of that figure took too much in response to having more pain than the prescribed dosage could handle, and the rest gave them to family or friends. In that same year, there were just over 13,000 reported prescription opioid-related deaths. But some people who shared their meds did so out of a place of compassion.
I did do that once with a girl.
And back to Nicole.
I felt so bad for her. She had rheumatoid arthritis, and this is like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And her doctor would not help her. And so I was literally giving her like half of my prescription just to help her. And I know it's illegal. Like I didn't care. I just did not care. This girl, like, she had a daughter. She couldn't even do her daughter's hair. Like, it was so horrible just to see how crippled she was.
That begs the question, how are patients affected?
Fentanyl is a drug that is very good at managing pain.
Here's a piece from the New York Times.
The day when they prescribed that, it changed everything for me. I was able to work full-time, raise my kids full-time, and then they took it away.
The thing is, She is most definitely not alone.
You feel like you're given three choices.
This clip is from NBC Nightly News. Her name is Maria Higginbotham, and she's one woman who knows exactly what I'm talking about.
You either live in agonizing, intractable pain that doesn't ever go away, or you go to the street and get the drugs off the street, which can kill you, or you commit suicide.
The fact remains that people were still hurting, and there wasn't a thing that the medical industrial complex could do about it, or at least were willing to do about it.
What I'm faced with right now is the forced tapering and the the pain pump, and making me feel like if you don't do this, we're cutting you off. Over the years, it's like my need to be treated for pain never went away.
You're hearing from 64-year-old retired nurse Sandra Johnstad, and I can tell you one thing, she is not retired because she wants to be.
I never really had that good of pain control until I went to UCSF there. And they set me up with a regimen of different medications, and I did pretty well. But then came the law changes and them not wanting physicians to treat pain. And so they just gradually started stripping away the different meds that I had.
So, it seems we're at a bit of a standoff.
God, it feels like a Charlie horse in your back. That's the only thing I can figure. It hurts really bad.
Here's some more from that New York Times report.
It's literally like radioactive termites are chewing your goddamn bone.
Way to describe it is you're being tortured.
The relief for their suffering actually exists, but some doctors are refusing to prescribe it.
He looked me in the face and he said, I will not give you any medications. If you want drugs, you can go get them on the street like everyone else.
Yes, the rate of prescription opioid deaths decreased, but the number of synthetic fentanyl and OxyContin deaths soared, surpassing both heroin and prescription opioid-related deaths by miles, which means we've only substituted one devil for another.
A drastic decline in opioid overdose deaths.
Check out this info from PBS.
New provisional data from the CDC suggests national opioid overdose fatalities have dropped to their lowest level in 3 years.
So now they can start loosening restrictions and treating pain again, right? Your guess is as good as mine, but I don't see it coming. All things being equal, I think things are the way they're going to stay. I don't see anything changing. People who need opioids are in a tight spot these days. They have no recourse. The guidelines are strict, and doctors are refusing to write prescriptions for fear of retribution. But the law is the law, and at present, there's no way around that. That's about the size of it, my friends. On the downside, opioids have a negative air to them because they can become addictive and eventually may stop working altogether. On the flip side, they help manage intense pain better than just about anything else out there. Now, we do have some options these days. There's the pain pump that Nicole is so vehemently opposed to, the spinal cord stimulator, acupuncture, acupressure, massage therapy, radiofrequency ablation, bee venom injections, and yoga, but none of them is really comparable to the relief you get with opiates. I suppose you have to pick your demons on this one. Do me a favor. I want you to imagine that you're in intense, nauseating, soul-crushing pain. The kind of pain that you can barely even begin to fathom, like trying to wrap your head around the number of stars in the sky or grains of sand on the shore. What would you do? Would you accept that your pain will never be at a 1 or a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10? That your fate has pegged you at a 7 to 10 for the rest of your life? Or would you take that 3 to 12% gamble and dive right in? When the cards are on the table, what are you going to do?